Alright, so enough of this craziness with image resolution and other boring things. What you really want to know is probably what a lot of people want to do with Adobe Photoshop, and that's how to restore a photo. So I went out looking very specifically for old 70s photos because I think one of the really big things that you can do with these old photos is to restore the color. And here we have a very interesting photo, to say the least. But, you know, if you look at the color, it's really washed out. So there are different ways that we can approach this to get this image back to what it could be. So let's take a look here, and there are different ways that we can adjust color. So first, I'm going to go to Image Mode Adjustments. And there are all kinds of different things. One of the easiest ways to do this is levels. Okay, so right now if we look at the levels, this is for your black and white overall, and we can see that from our graph, or our histogram as they call them, everything is reasonably good. We've got pretty good results here. But what happens if we go and look at the red? Oh, look, if we jack this back to where we have our levels, generally if you have an empty space here in your histogram, you want to adjust that. So let's see what happens if we go and adjust the red, green, and blues for this, and see where we end up. Probably not our greatest result here. I think we could do a little bit better. Histograms are great, and levels are also very helpful. But, you know, if you really want to get down to this, there are other things that we can do. Let's take a look at Image Adjustments, and we're going to go into Color Balance. Okay, so right now everything's kind of muted. We don't have a whole lot of reds. So what would happen if we were to take out some cyan and add some reds? And maybe warm it up a little bit with some of this. There's probably a lot of green in here, but you know what? This really doesn't seem to be working for us either. Now, you'll notice that Preserve Luminosity can be turned on. You can also change things according to shadows and highlights and all kinds of things. But I really don't think this is the right tool for this job either. This one's pretty whacked out, and it's really old. So what if we went to Adjustments, and we were going to look at Curves. This is my favorite one here. But you know what? If we make a change in curves, it's going to permanently affect things. So if you wanted to make a change and you wanted to see how this would work without actually affecting the image, you'll notice down here in our Layers menu, because I love layers, right? This is where we can make a layer adjustment. Okay? And we have the same things that we had under the Image Adjustment function in the top menu bar. But the cool thing about this is that if we make an adjustment here, it is not permanent, and we can delete this or we can change this. So I always love flexibility, especially when it comes to Photoshop. When it comes to Photoshop, a lot of people will like to delete things, erase things, make permanent changes to their images, and then later on you might look back at it and you say, oh, that wasn't the right thing, and you've lost all that time. You have to go back to your original. But if we go in here to Curves, look what happened down here. We now have an extra layer. This layer is going to affect the background layer. And the same way that we were checking out our reds, greens, and blues, we can come in here and we can check things out this way. So we've got a little bit of empty space there. Let's take that down. We can move this and try and pull some blues back into it. Okay. Notice that if I pull up here, we're adding reds. If I pull down here below this diagonal line, we're taking away reds. So we're getting a bluer sky, but unfortunately it's still a really cold image. So let's go down here to greens. We can pull this in a little bit. And what would happen if we reduce some of this? Does this pull back any reds for us? Let's see. It is getting a little bit warmer. and the image is getting a little bit more interesting. So now let's see what happens. We go here, probably not what we want to do. What would happen if, oh, look at that, it's starting to warm up. So with our layer adjustment, we can turn the visibility off and on and see how we're affecting the image. So I think it's getting a little bit better, but not exactly where I want to go. But the nice thing here is that we can keep messing with things, and we can do this. Now watch what happens. Look at this. You can go crazy, all right? Some of you may be really enjoying this. You can also do all kinds of crazy things, which are not necessarily productive, but boy, can you have some fun here. So I'm going to undo a couple of these. I actually hit the backspace key to delete some of that. And let's see where we're going here. So I'm trying to pull some warmth back into the image. And let's see what happens if we come here. Whoops, we don't need that extra point. I think we only really need 1 point. There we go. Look at that. It's starting to warm up now. It's hard to tell what's happening because obviously the iguana is green. If we pull this back this way, not so good. It's starting to get too crazy. Let's go back to the blue. See what we can do here. If we pull this over, we can pull some warmth back into it, but I don't think that's right either. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll punch these, and what this does is it pops the highlights and the high end and the low end. So this could help us. Let's see where we go from here. We pulled some blue back into it. What happens if we pull the reds in? Not doing a whole lot for me there, right? So here, this is starting to get kind of interesting. But with the curves, I think the most important thing is that you need to be able to play with it and not worry too much about where you're headed. You'll get a feel for it after a little while. Look at that. We can really pull some greens back in, but not so much what we're looking for. All right. So if you ever get worried that you're wandering off into a field here where there's nothing productive being done, I'd say we're getting some pretty good results here. We're starting to get a little bit more warmth in there. Not so bad, right? You can pull this down. I would like to see a little bit more blue in the sky, though. So you can add points, and you can move things around. So what I'm doing is I'm just clicking to add a point, and it's not working too badly. Let's see here what would happen if we add some more reds into here. Really not getting that nice blue, though, are we? So here we can add some reds. This is going to be your high end. This is going to be your low end. So these will be your darks. These will be your brights. So if you look at this here, we can add red to the highlights. Not so much going there. All right, but we are adding some red back into there because it would appear that this old 70s photo has lost a lot of its red, lost a lot of its green. Let's turn this off and on one more time. It's got a little more pop to it. We're picking up a lot more contrast, but you'll notice down here things are looking a lot better. So I can't say I'm still exactly happy with this. I feel like we could get a little bit more going with the greens. Don't know that I need that. Let's see what happens if we pull this up a little bit. We're just mostly adding a lot of contrast to the image right now, which is not a bad thing. It was a little bit washed out to begin with. Okay. So I think something like this is not working too badly. Let's take a look here and see what we've got. I think we've got a lot more definition here. Things are looking pretty good. So if you were to look at this, you might say, oh golly, it's still a little bit washed out. What would happen if we came down here? We're going to click on background, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff in here. What if we added some saturation to the image? There's color balance, there's black and white, a lot of different things that we can do. Exposure. Let's take a look and see what happens if we add some saturation to the image. Okay, ooh, look at that. Wow, that's really making it look a lot more interesting. Okay, so what I did was I increased the saturation by 28 units, whatever those units may be. We can go all the way out this way to 100, probably not what we want. So you have a slider here, and the great thing is that these are all non-permanent changes. We could do this up here through the image adjustments, but unfortunately those changes will be permanent. So what I like about this is that we can come in here, and let's say that's working pretty good for me. But you know what? If I really think I've gone too far, I can change the opacity on my adjustments. Okay? So sometimes you really want to push it so that you can find out whether it's really going or not. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with our retouch here. But you know what? When you're doing a retouch, you never want to save over the original. So let's do this. We're going to go to File, and we're going to do a Save As. And where it says Retouch1, we're going to save this as Retouch2. And you'll also notice that it is now a PSD. You cannot save a JPEG and have layers. These over here are our layers. We now have 3 layers, and it's not really going to change the file size because an adjustment layer doesn't do that. But it does help to save things this way. So here we got this maximize compatibility. You'll see this the first time. I always turn this off and say don't show again. Of course I want to maximize my compatibility. So let's hit OK. And I am going to pause here to save, and we'll be back in a minute and we'll see what we can do to clean up some of this craziness in the background.